again on the third day, they still doubted that. They still felt hopeless at this point where Jesus died on the cross. And so they had believed that he was the Messiah, but now he was dead. And so if Jesus' enemies had been able to kill him, might not his followers be in danger as well? Because they scattered, right? They went and hid in the upper room. They were trying to save their own lives because they just witnessed the death of Jesus, the death of the Messiah. And so as the first reports here began coming in of Jesus' resurrection, the disciples were understandably skeptical. They were skeptical of what they were hearing. They were hearing from different witnesses. They were hearing from Mary and then Peter, where Jesus came unto him, right? But they were starting to hear these reports. And such a phenomenon as this of a person being raised from the dead was relatively unheard of in those days, even though Jesus had raised Lazarus from the grave. But it's not heard of in our day either, right? We don't hear, it's not an everyday occurrence, or we don't see it on breaking news, which you probably wouldn't. On certain news channels, you might not even hear nothing about it. But we just don't hear that. It doesn't happen. It's unheard of. And so Jesus' disciples needed to be convinced. We all have to be convinced, right? No matter what. Somebody has to give us some convincing evidence for us just to believe stuff, right? And so they were in that same situation. They had to be convinced that Jesus indeed literally had risen from the dead. And so we see this week that of those followers, that they were convinced of the reality of Jesus' resurrection. They were convinced of this through not only verbal, but also visual and interpretive witnesses. In Luke chapter 24 through verses 32 through 49 of our lesson, it describes to us the disciples' initial disbelief in Jesus' resurrection and their subsequent encounter that they have with him there in Jerusalem, where he opens up their minds, right? He opens up their minds to understand the scriptures, and then he commissions them to be witnesses. And the passage here that we're reading, it follows that account there of the Emmaus Road, where Jesus had appeared to these two disciples that wasn't part of the original 12, but they didn't recognize him until he broke bread with them there in the home. The disciples from Emmaus have returned to Jerusalem, and they're going to share their experience. But still, the other disciples are still skeptical, believing the women's report of Jesus' resurrection to be that of nonsense, according to Luke chapter 24, verse 11. Jesus appears to them, though, just as they are speaking about Jesus' appearance. He's going to suddenly stand in their midst when these two witnesses are there with the other 11. And Jesus is going to ask them to touch him, to prove that he is not a spirit or a ghost, right? Or just a figment of their imagination. And he's going to invite them to eat. And that's just demonstrating, I'll get it out in a minute, his physical form, that he was indeed risen from the dead. He was a human body. He was still flesh. And so, but Jesus explains here those scriptures to the disciples, and he's just simply highlighting how his suffering and death and resurrection fulfilled all of those Old Testament prophecies. And we could understand why these followers, these disciples, were so skeptical, because they had seen the brutal beating that Jesus had went through, that no man could possibly live through that. No one had ever survived the crucifixion. They seen Jesus give up the ghost. They seen the spear pierce through his side and the water pour out, and how in the world, and they took him off the cross. They prepared him for burial. They placed him in the tomb. That big stone was rolled over and guards there to guard him. And so we can see why they would be skeptical that Jesus was indeed risen from the dead. But they're going to have their eyes open to them. And so the commission to witness, Jesus is going to instruct them to remain in Jerusalem until they are clothed with power from on high. And then they are to go and preach this message to all nations, beginning there at Jerusalem. And so we'll start with verse 32. And they said one to another, "Did not our heart burn within us while he talked with us by the way, and while he opened to us the Scriptures?" And they rose up the same hour and returned to Jerusalem, and found the 11 gathered together, and them that were with them, saying, "The Lord is risen indeed, and hath appeared to Simon." And they told what things were done in the way, and how he was known of them in breaking of the bread. And so the context of our lesson here is provided to us in the verses of 13 through 31. We won't read all of those, but it tells us all of the good, I guess, all of the story behind where our lesson picks up here at 32, where Jesus appeared to these two men walking on the road to Emmaus, and where they invited him in. And he opened the Scriptures and he began to teach them. And then when he broke the bread, that automatically signaled those brain in their heads that this is our Messiah. This is Jesus, right? Because the breaking of the bread was done in such a way that it brought back what he did at the Last Supper. And so these ones who returned to Jerusalem were the two disciples who had encountered Jesus on that road to Emmaus. And we know that one was named Cleopas in verse 18, but the other is not named to us. But they hastily made their way to Jerusalem to report their experience there to the other 11 disciples, because Judas has thus betrayed the Lord and went out and hung himself, right? And so there's only 11 disciples. And so Simon Peter had seen the resurrected Jesus. In the meantime, all of this was taking place and had already informed his colleagues of what he had seen and witnessed. And so the verbal witness of these two here from the Emmaus Road just really affirmed what Peter already knew, right? They were totally convinced that they had been truly with the Lord Jesus Christ. And so it seems that at least some of the others still had some doubts. We've read about doubting Thomas, right? And the Lord invited him up to touch the wound on his side and to look at the piercing of his hands and his feet, right? They still doubted. They were still having some doubts. And so these two had been joined by Jesus on that road to Emmaus, and they had invited Jesus to stay in their home, and they discovered something very special about him. And we pick up after Jesus had left them within our lesson here. But they talked about, before they knew who he was, they had sensed that he was different. That this man was different from others they had encountered. And while they walked along the road, Jesus explained the Old Testament to them, the necessity of his death on the cross. And it says their hearts burned as he opened the Scriptures to them. And hearts that burn because of Jesus are hearts that want to share the joy of his resurrection with others. That's what that was true here of these two Emmaus disciples, and it remains true today for us. If we don't find our heart wanting to share that good news, we need to go before the Lord and ask Him to touch our souls with that desire. Ask Him to burn our hearts with that same desire to spread the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so once these two were back in Jerusalem, these two were not among those original 12 reported the news here to the 11 original disciples of Jesus that were left. They related how Jesus was known to them in the breaking of bread. And so that just simply recalls to them the events there of the Last Supper, where Jesus had what we do as communion, right? Where He broke bread with them, and also anticipates the future Lord's Supper, when Jesus will be made known to the church in all of His glory. Verse 36, and as they thus spake, Jesus Himself stood in the midst of them, and saith unto them, Peace be unto you. But they were terrified and affrighted, and supposed that they had seen a spirit. And He said unto them, Why are you troubled? And why do thoughts arise in your hearts? Behold my hands and my feet, that it is I myself. Handle me and see. For a spirit hath not flesh and bones, as you see me have. And when He had thus spoken, He shewed them His hands and His feet. And while they yet believed not for joy and wondered, He said unto them, Have you here any meat? And they gave Him a piece of broiled fish and a honeycomb. And so, while these here were witnessing to these other disciples, Jesus appears to all of them there in that room where they were gathered. And while they were discussing those events, Jesus Himself appeared in their very midst. At first they thought they were seeing a ghost, and it tells us they were terrified and frightened. Each and every one of us in here this morning, if we would see Jesus Himself standing here or one of our past loved ones, we would probably get terrified. I don't care how much you know, it'd probably scare you, right? Because we're human-minded. But it says they were terrified and frightened. And at this, Jesus knew. He sensed that, because when He became before them, he spake to them in their midst, and He said, Peace be unto you. It's the same way as the angel Gabriel would say when he come to Mary, you know. He said, Peace be unto you, right? For I bring you tidings of great joy. Don't be afraid, right? So Jesus was letting them know, peace be unto you. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm not here to harm you. It's me. It's your master, your Messiah. But it still terrified them. But Jesus showed them. He said, look at my nail-pierced hands and my feet and the piercing of my side, right? And no doubt that if He turned around and showed them His back, we would see all the lashes from the whipping that He took. No doubt that we would see the piercing of the crown of thorns in His head, right? All of these wounds that Jesus had, it would be showing. We would see them, right? And He's wanting them to look. And He not only wants them to look, He tells them to handle me, to touch me. Touch these and see that these wounds are real, right? That it's me. It's the Lord Jesus that died for you on the cross. I've risen, just like I've said. Don't be afraid. But both ancient and modern religious establishments, if you will, they've long denied the resurrection of Jesus. They still deny that to this day, but it's clear to us from the passage that Jesus was no mere phantom or no ghost, right? He was the real McCoy. What they were looking at was Jesus's real body. It wasn't a figment of their imagination. They wasn't having a dream. They wasn't having a nightmare. This was all real before their very eyes. And so it was a glorified body, but nonetheless, the actual body of Jesus Christ Himself. And so to further impress upon His disciples that they were not hallucinating, that they were not going mad or crazy, Jesus asked them for some food. So eating in their presence would further reinforce the truth of a literal bodily resurrection from the dead. We know a ghost can't eat or drink, right? A lot of people in here probably shouldn't bring this, but it's Casper the Friendly Ghost. Have you ever seen Casper be able to drink a glass of milk? No. A ghost cannot eat or drink, right? Supposedly a ghost can go through the wall, I guess. But Jesus wasn't a ghost. He was standing there in his bodily form. He asked them for some food, something to eat. And so the resurrected Jesus appears here before his disciples, who initially mistake him for a ghost. And then he's proving to them his physical reality by showing them all of those of his hands and his feet and inviting them to touch him. And he's emphasizing to them that a spirit doesn't have flesh and bones. And he further demonstrates all of this physical body form that he's presenting in front of them by eating a piece of the broiled fish there that they have in their presence and a honeycomb. And so the disciples are discussing all of these events surrounding Jesus' death and resurrection in this upper room, right? They're all gathered there and they're talking about what's next. What do we do, right? And that's what we would probably be doing, right? And so then suddenly there, Jesus appeared to them. And they were terrified, thinking of them seeing this spirit. But Jesus is still trying to assure them that he's not a ghost. He's eating the fish. He's inviting them to touch the wounds of his body, to take a look. Here I am. And so what this purpose of Jesus' appearance is, it serves to confirm Jesus' resurrection. It's confirming his resurrection to his followers and to us as his followers, right, of those that would come on after all of this. And it's providing them with all of this tangible evidence. Everybody's got to have evidence, right? We've always got to have proof. And so he's given them all of this evidence to show them that he is truly alive. Jesus is alive and well this morning. It also lays out to us the very foundation for them to become witnesses of his resurrection. And they're not only witnesses of his resurrection, but they're going to be witnesses of the good news of salvation. And he said unto them, these are the words which I spake unto you while I was yet with you, that all things must be fulfilled, which were written in the law of Moses and in the prophets and in the Psalms concerning me. Then opened he their understanding, that they might understand the Scriptures, and said unto them, thus it is written, and thus it behoved Christ to suffer, and to rise from the dead the third day, and that repentance and remission of sins should be preached in his name among all nations, beginning at Jerusalem. And so now that Jesus has proved to them, right, he's proven the reality that he has truly been resurrected. He's resurrection to all of them. He went on to explain to them again, I say, because he's been trying to explain it to them while he's with them, right? He's explaining to them again what all of this meant. And so much of what Jesus had told his disciples had previously not been comprehended. How many times have we been told and told and told, and it takes us a little while to comprehend? Maybe it's a lot of times we're hearing, but we're not listening.